Chair Latz and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And a sincere thank you to Senator Pappas for bringing this bill forward, along with all your continued support throughout the years for our Minnesota youth. I also just again want to thank Chair Latz and Senator Limmer too as well for all your continued support for our youth across our 87 counties here in Minnesota. As mentioned, my name is Curtis Shanklin, and I am here today representing the Minnesota Department of Corrections, where I have the distinct honor to serve as Deputy Commissioner overseeing the Reintegration and Restorative Services Division. As I proceed through my testimony, which will be brief, I implore each of you to think about this bill through what we call the My Child test. If you're a daughter or son, granddaughter or grandson, or maybe even niece or nephew, had contact with the juvenile justice system that would warrant potentially being secure in a detention facility, how would you want their experience to be? An analysis of both local and statewide data regarding arrests in Minnesota have revealed glaring inconsistencies that stretch across our 87 county lines. And despite the best efforts of our courageous women and men in law enforcement, we have found that there is subjective, unnecessary, and at times inappropriate detainment of Minnesota youth who are low risk and do not pose a threat to public safety. This was the case more than 20 years ago here in Minnesota, along with an overcrowding of our secure detention centers that led Minnesota, with the assistance of the Annie E. Casey Foundation, to adopt the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative model, a model that has been the most successful juvenile justice reform effort to date nationally, as well as here in Minnesota. Through the leadership of Minnesota JDAI and communities across the state, we were able to safely reduce our juvenile detention center numbers by close to 80% at its highest point, and did so without compromising public safety and while saving Minnesota taxpayers millions of dollars. A central component to this success and the precipitous drop in local detention numbers was the adopting and use of a statewide risk assessment instrument, also known as ARRAY, in our JDAI sites. Senate File 1819 is a bill that would require secure detention facilities in the state of Minnesota to use an objective and racially, ethnically, and gender responsive juvenile detention risk assessment instrument, also known as ARRAY, to inform detention decisions. Under the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, also known as JDAI, many secure detention facilities, both in the state of Minnesota as well as nationally, already use this tool. The ARRAY is specific to the 36-hour window from the time of potential detention admission to the required court hearing, and is specific to assess the youth's risk to reoffend prior to court or their ability to not appear for their court hearing. Lastly, I will point out that in some states, like Wisconsin, the use of one tool is required for the entire state, regardless of location. And listening to our local stakeholders and understand the differences in locations of our secure detention facilities across the 87 counties here in Minnesota, we are asking that secure detention facilities use a model of the ARRAY and tailor it to their local jurisdiction. This will allow local jurisdictions to tailor the tool and for stakeholders to be involved in the creation and implementation of their tool. Before I close, I will also just point out, after listening to the prior testimony, and Sheriff Habel and Commissioner Schnell and Chair Latz and others talk about the deficiency of resources as it pertains to how do we address the needs of our adults with mental health and how many of them end up in our local jails. Unfortunately, that is true for our youth too as well. Because of this deficiency in mental health resources, our detention facilities often are the place where many of these youth end up, without the resources and at time the staff to meet their needs. I think it is important for us, particularly what I consider our most vulnerable, complex, but also our most thriving population, our youth that have the most potential, that we are ensuring that those youth who we do take into secure detention are those who absolutely need to be there, and that we are creating options for others, because we do know that once a youth is introduced into secure detention, the likelihood of them committing a more significant offense increases by upwards of 60%. And with that, I will conclude my testimony, and I will stand for any questions that any committee members may have. Thank you.